Next, we're going to turn to stop chasing talent and start designing it. We're going to be joined by Mark Peters of Butterball Farms, Laura Davis of Evolve HR and Communications, Kevin Voss of Corewell Health, and our moderator, Bridget Altenburg from Skills for Chicago. Please welcome our panel.
Apparently, we are required to have a Chicagoan on every panel. So we can welcome our friends from Grand Rapids to the greatest city in the world. Thanks. You're welcome. Our workforce, you guys have heard this a number of times already, but our workforce is going through massive disruption right now, more than I've seen in my 25 years of workforce, between global economic changes, immigration, federal funding cuts, and labor participation rate continuing to decline. And now we have AI on top of all of those things. So I'm really excited to be joined by employers who want to tell you about an exciting way that they have collaborated to think about talent differently. So I'm just going to jump right in. Mark, Kevin, and Laura, I'd love for you to start by sharing quickly your role and why you started this program in the first place.
Yeah, I guess I'll start. So I wrote a book called The Retention Trap. And one of my sort of ahas was that as employers, we tend to be the dams in this employee development world. And we don't like to think about it that way, but like 50% of the United States works for small to mid-market companies. And many of us have like one of one key positions. We don't want to lose that person. But that kind of stunts their career unless they go out on their own and look for something different. But this happens in our entry-level workforce all the time as well. And so really started to try to think about how could we do this differently and how could we talk to other employers about moving people from our company to another company. And then what would that look like if we entertained the idea of flow between companies? I'll start.
My name is Kevin Voss. I lead facilities and support services for Corewell Health. Corewell Health is a health system all based in the state of Michigan. We are the largest employer in the state of Michigan. And for some perspective, we have about 26 to 27% of the licensed beds. So we have 21 hospitals, and I lead a team that's approximately 5,500 people. And I believe that those people are incredibly talented and desiring a path. And I also have significant issues with talent and finding the right talent. Our facilities team that's under my responsibility is about 500 people to care for what I term the biggest patient that we have, our buildings. And I just saw a statistic that 32% of that 500 person team is age 60 and over. So what I'm really looking to do and why I partner with Mark is how do we think about the gap in talent that we have and the incredible talent that we have in our ecosystem at Corewell and within the West Michigan and Southeast Michigan communities, and how do we think differently and create solutions that can actually solve the talent gap that we have.
Awesome. And I get to work with both of these and other employers to really focus on how do we activate, how do we orchestrate, and how do we really execute against what we're trying to do. So to really incorporate innovation around a system that's broken, and that's the talent system, and really challenge us all to think differently, and also to engage as employers to drive the solutions that we need, not to be recipients of programs that are trying to help.
I love everything about this program, and especially at Skills for Chicago. We're often bringing overlooked talent to the companies that we work with, only for them to find out that somebody got stuck in their applicant tracking system and they had them there all the time. So I'd love for you to talk about exactly what iNexus is, exactly what you did, and especially the partners that helped you get this off the ground. And you guys just jump right in. You know who needs to start.
So I would say iNexus is not a program, but it is an innovative talent ecosystem that we are building and collaborating with employers. So when employers are at the table and they're able to define what they need, short-term, long-term, it empowers them to drive and coordinate and collaborate with all of the resources that we have within our market. So at the end of it, we're building resilient employees, we're building resilient employers, and we're building resilient communities. So we're retaining that talent within the market and we're sharing it amongst the employers who are willing to come to the table and co-create the talent ecosystem that's going to work.
Yeah, so I would answer when Mark approached me and said, what if businesses could solve problems differently than think tank groups that study labor and economics? And that was a really interesting idea to me. If someone on my planning, design, and construction team comes and tells me that this care center that's 90,000 square feet is behind schedule 6 months, and we're going to lose X amount of revenue, and probably more importantly, we're not going to be able to serve the community because we're 6 months behind schedule, I'm going to figure out a way to solve that problem. Mark said, let's do the same thing with talent and labor. Let's actually look at the ecosystem, Mark's talent, who's going to be at his organization, and can we make them be there a little bit longer through development? But there might not be a place for them after that development. Could they come to Corewell Health? And could we as business people think about solving how to do that well and how to do that with the employee at the center? So we're also thinking about different aspects of benefits cliff as we move someone from a $18 an hour job to a $30 an hour job. So the idea and the innovation for me was that two businesses and a community of businesses were going to try to solve this problem.
Yeah, thank you, Kevin. You and I had a little conversation this morning after the breakfast that I was at, and sort of having an epiphany that for big scaled companies, this is a lot harder to do than it is for smaller, privately owned companies. And so understanding some of the things that you've had to go through to fight to do some of these things in a large scale organization. But and I've heard people here talk about all of like the barrier resolution and all of the things that happen that keep people from moving. And, one of the theme of this conference is trust. And one of the things that I realized is a lot of the people that work for us in frontline positions have absolutely lost trust in the organizations. They've lost trust in the system. And that's because if you really think about it systemically, we've built this system where people can get incremental raises, but they're never going to get past the benefits cliff. Now, everybody's got a story of somebody that did it, but the reality is statistically, it isn't going to happen. And our world is just getting more and more complex. And so I think what we're trying to prove with this little test that we're doing is that employers need to take some responsibility. We need some intentionality with the leadership of our corporations, of our businesses. And we need to lean into these things because if our people are not resilient, our companies won't be, especially in this fast changing world, and then our communities won't be. But we can, as employers, impact this system. And so part of what we're trying to do is we're also trying to get education delivered incrementally to people who are at work full time and get them trained, not just specifically in the skills that Corewell needs in the 18 months, but also some of the soft skills, some of the things that they're going to be required to know to live a life that is above the benefits cliff. And so, people can get raises into the mid-20s, but it doesn't get them out of that band of being reliant on some sort of government subsidy. And I think what we have as employers is the opportunity to say, we can fix this problem. We can do this. We just need to partner with each other and build the system. So that's what we're trying to do.
So I'd love for one of you to walk us through this cohort pilot, what you've learned in the development of this cohort and where you want it to go as you kick this off.
Sure. So the pilot began, we have about 12 organizations that came to the table and said, you know what, I want to think differently about talent and I want to curate our destination and the outcomes. So we came together, focused on finding hard to fill jobs to start, focusing on how do we get people from entry level to living wage, $32 an hour jobs in 18 months. And how, as employers, are we going to align around career pathways, the skills that are needed to succeed? And then once we aligned our vision as employers, then we said, okay, what amazing resources do we have in West Michigan that can help us achieve it? So instead of thinking it a slice of pie, we're thinking it as the whole pie and bringing those resources together. We're not looking to recreate the wheel. We are looking to leverage the workforce development that is actively happening. And then we're aligning our job descriptions, common titles, common skills that are needed to do those jobs, and working with the education institutions to align the curriculum to give these candidates the opportunity to be proficient and to be worthy of that $32 an hour job over 18 months. So what I found is, it's shifting from a hoarding mentality. We often think of our talent as it's my talent. They work for Corewell, they work for Butterball. The reality is people are going to change jobs. They either leave for managers or they want new opportunities. So let's embrace that and let's work together to help them find the pathways to stay in the region, but to also have access and opportunity that they might not have. So we just kicked off in February, the cohorts. We have 15 employees signed up at Butterball. Butterball is paying for their training, co-curated with Kevin, so we know what we're navigating them to in 18 months, provided that they show up, they do their part, they succeed in the credentialing, and then they'll have the opportunity to move over to Corewell and at that $32 an hour and continue their career pathways. So our big, hairy, audacious goal is to have career pathways for every industry and to curate and align and collaborate as employers, create it, find the commonalities, and then really start to build this talent ecosystem that is about sharing, not hoarding.
Okay. I would just add on that because I think the other thing that we're also trying to do is what's the value in the system for doing this? So one of my assumptions is there's a ton of waste in the talent system. And if we can eliminate some of that waste, the value goes somewhere. So who's willing to pay for it? And what we're trying to build is a structure that becomes sustainable. And I love what you said about we're not trying to create new resources. I've always said we don't have a resource problem, we have an alignment problem. And that's one of the things I love about being here and meeting like all of the different organizations that are here is because there's some of these platforms are changing so fast, but anything that would enable us to make this easier for the people that work for us is, well, it's going to go back to, it's going to help build trust because we can do this reliably for these 15 people that are in this pilot. This isn't like, hey, if you work hard and you stay diligent, you're going to, we're going to be able to give you this promotion. They were Corewell was part of the interview process. Like there is as much as you can get a corporate guarantee, there's a guarantee that they're going to have a job in 18 months. That's pretty awesome. And if we can continue to do this, there's value for my company in keeping people longer. There's value for Kevin's company in having at least a piece of their work pipeline defined. So one of the objectives of the project is to quantify what that value is and see what employers would be willing to pay to participate so that we can build a sustainable, scalable structure and not just have a nice story.
And I would add, Corewell being a very large employer, actually internally has this fight. I've been believing in my employees for 10 plus years, and I've been talking to my supervisors and saying, hey, I want you to identify people that are ready for growth and development, and then I actually want to help them move to another department. And they would look at me like I had 8 eyes, right? They said, why do you want to take my best people? And I'm like, because there's value to the organization to do this. We'll keep them in the organization better or longer, right? And that'll increase economic development in the community and health, et cetera, et cetera. That's just what Mark and I are doing. In fact, some of the pushback that I've gotten about partnering with iNexus is, why do you have to look outside of the system if we're so big already? And that's already internal pressure that I'm feeling. And the pushback that I say to them, but what if we could actually do it thinking outside the system? How much stronger could we be then to actually interpret that or design that into the system in a different way? So really, I believe strongly that the value exists and that we put barriers in place as business owners that we can remove.
So in the last minute, because I'm told if your panel ends on time, you get an extra cookie. Is that right? Yes. I thought I heard that. We're going to wrap this up with your last question. You each have 30 seconds. You can give advice to employers on how to get started, and ask, a give, or anything else you want to close this out.
If you're an employer, I think you've just got to think outside of just your traditional walls to solve some of these problems. And if you're an employer in this room, identify some of the service and platform providers that can help, because there's some great things that are already in place, and we have some great stuff in West Michigan. But as the more time I spend in Chicagoland, some of the resources here are just fantastic, and it's a much bigger system. But people that can make those changes and help you make those changes are in this room. And I would say that if anybody's interested, so this would be my give, would be anybody that's interested, please get in touch with us, and we would be more than willing to share our ongoing results and learnings with anybody who's curious, because the more people that mess around with stuff like this, the better off we're going to be.
I would add that when we started talking about this pilot, Corewell was finishing up an ARPA grant that was about $1.2 million that had approximately 85 community members and current employees go through that. And we both had the inside up model and the outside in model, right? And I think we all understand that model. And what Mark and I and kind of my give is I think there's an opportunity to think about between us, inside out, outside in, and between us. And that's what we're really trying to do. The other thing that I want to add is I wanted to make sure that some of the learnings from that ARPA grant were built into this. So support and barrier removal is through an organization called The Source. Corewell has had almost 4,000 employees touch The Source, and we have 92% retention rate a year later of those 4,000 employees. So there are things that I believe that are foundational to make this work business to business as well.
I would say also to keep an open mind. Be strategic about the companies that you approach to do work like this. These are the companies that are willing to think outside the box, to reinvent a system that isn't currently working, but is willing to come to the table and have the conversations. And start small. We have 12 employees. We launched our first pilot. We're going to hopefully launch 2 to 3 more this year so we can learn and create something together. So it's not the burden of one company to figure it out. It's the burden of the community and the collaboration. And you can, I guess my ask would be, start small. Find like-minded, strategic, innovative employers that are willing to try something different. And you'll be amazed at the momentum that you can drive. And the give is any questions. I mean, we're building sustainable standard operating procedures. We're learning fast. We're falling and leaning into it. And, we're not going to get everything right, but we're willing to take the risk, and we're willing to learn, and we're willing to share whatever we can with whoever will listen. So call us.
Awesome. When I was in basic training, we had 3 responses: yes, ma'am, no, excuse, ma'am. And I love that you guys have taken the no excuse and taken it to a whole other level of, there's no excuse to not find good talent. There's no excuse to not find great overlooked talent. And we have to think about things differently. So thank you for sharing this. Appreciate everybody's time.